Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge cycling podcast for stage 11 of the Tour de France from Toulouse to Toulouse, a transition stage 157 kilometers long, and we just had 3 hours of wall-to-wall action. This is one of the most unique, crazy stages I think we've ever covered. This episode is brought to you by our show partner, Join Cycling. It looks like nothing. You'll look at this profile and think, what's there to get too excited about? One category 4 climb in the first 100 Ks, and it's mostly just flat on big roads. No like echelon danger or anything like that. And then a succession of hills in the with about 50 Ks to 40 Ks to go. The last two of which are the hardest. 1400 meters, 7%. It's still on a big road, big entry. It's not like the most crazy entry or climb, but that descends, and then they go into the Côte de Pêche David, and that's a wall at the bottom, like 200 meters, 18%, literally a wall at the bottom and it's a right-hand narrow entry. And then there's a fast descent, and then 6K, 7Ks on the flat afterwards. Flat finish. In normal cycling, one would think that this is like normal cycling, this is just a Wout van Aert and Biniam Girmay and maybe Jasper Philipsen on a good day versatile sprint stage. And in this current like format and of cycling, and what we saw on stages 2 and 4 in Rouen and Bologna, if I'm looking at this with any versatile sprinter, even the Van Aerts of this world, Benji, like what chances did you give for an actual sprint of a group of 50?
Honestly, almost 0%. And the reality is that if you look at this parkour and you look at not just the parkour, but the situations we've had in the stages that you just mentioned, you know that if it goes to the peloton, we'll have action in the peloton. If it's not attacks from GC riders, it's movement and pacing and hard pacing on the climbs by GC riders trying to keep them in position. And that stuff will cause Merlier, Milan and so forth to drop. So just inherently the action that you'd expect from GC teams positioning themselves is already enough to make the sprinters suffer. But there were certainly a few teams that maybe tried to control a little bit more than I expected. I think that's fair to say, but I guess we should start at the exact start of the race, because breakaway formation in this stage, Patrick, was ridiculous. Ridiculous, because it just kept on going. But it started off pretty simple. Stage hunters, there's 3 of them, Mauro Schmidt, Ballerini, Abrahamsen, from the first breakaway of the day. Okay, they go up the road, 3 riders, they go, and that's it for a second. They form a 3-rider breakaway. But obviously, there's more teams than just 3 that want to go in the breakaway. So attacks just keep coming behind, but that first 3-man group, that stays up ahead. Were you surprised to see Jonathan Milan try to jump in the breakaway with teammates?
I wasn't surprised, and I think, I tweeted it this morning, and we've been talking about it, but if you're Johnny Milan green jersey bid, Benji, and Trek, you want this break to win. You want the break to win, because this is a 50-pointer. Luke will correct me if I'm wrong. This is a 50-pointer. And let's say this stage plays out like we think it might have from the peloton. It's going to be a sprint of 12, Van der Poel probably the favorite, and Pogačar is going to take second and a whopping 30-35 points. And you can run your little mathematical models that I was talking about and saying, okay, Pog can't win green because of the intermediates. What if, Benji, Pogačar gets level with Milan, he kills Vingegaard the next 3 days, and he has the opportunity, all he has to do at some intermediate sprints is just follow 2 people who aren't even sprinting anymore. Yep. I'm not sure he wouldn't do it. And I don't think you want to take that risk if you're Trek. Secondly, you got Sturven, good for this stage. Simmons, good for this stage. Thibaut Naesen, in theory, but not really, good for this stage with his legs at the moment. And Milan, 0% chance to make the finish, even to sprint for 5th for points. So you have to get in the break. Wanty are a bit down on manpower. Ruch crashed, Zimmerman crashed, Broe crashed. Benny is looking in good shape climbing-wise, but they just are down on manpower. Alpecin, Benji's the tricky one. I think they held the key to this stage, and they really influenced it a lot.
They influenced it a lot, but I feel like in the first part of the race, I saw Intermarché controlling a little bit more than Alpecin did in the fast phase of the race, because when you see 10 riders go off the front, including Milan, Little Trek and so forth, there was an Intermarché rider in 11th, 12th position, or sometimes not in that group, and you see in the background that Intermarché basically brings the peloton back to the back of that group gradually, which is how you control breakaway. So Intermarché was actively controlling this breakaway formation, in my opinion. Now, Wout van Aert was also super active in this race. Wout van Aert tried to attack numerous times, and when I say numerous times, I say he created the chasing group at the start of the race here. So like we said earlier, 3 riders up the road, Wout van Aert together with a bunch of other riders form a chasing group. But we said it already, Patrick. It's not just the action of the intermediate sprint, not just GC stuff, but we're looking at people just trying to get in the breakaway that are causing the breakaway not to go. Because let's say group gets created with 10 teams present. There's 5 to 7 teams that are not actually happy about that because they also wanted to be in the breakaway. So they start jumping. And it's this constant infinite loop of teams missing out and teams jumping again. That's what we saw for the first 30, 35 kilometers of this race. Did you see Alpecin also actively controlling, or what did you see from them in the first 40k?
Alpecin did the typical. Van der Poel's not jumping with anything. And beforehand they say he's sick. I don't think they were lying. He had a bit of a cold or a snotty nose. Maybe some Australian school children were shipped in to keep him up on the rest day. And he's not jumping even when a counter move goes with like 20 riders. He's not jumping, and it's like, that's not a bluff, Benji, because if that group gets into the front with 2 Trek, 2 FDJ, Van Aert, Campenaerts, you ain't playing for the stage anymore. I'm sorry, Sylvain Dillier, he's not pulling it back. And so I think he was letting his legs get into the race. And then they change completely. And he says we then see Xander Murasa in a counter move. And I'm like, okay, typical Alpecin. They want to make sure it's just a break of 3 so they can control it easily. Murasa starts pulling. And you're like, excuse me? He's pulling with the FDJ guys. And so he's got the green light to go for it. And you might think, who's Xander Murasa? Let me tell you who Xander Murasa is. He came
second on, he came top 5 in the Planche de Belfier stage that Dylan Teuns won.
And he came 18th on Mur de Bretagne, beating Berkemels and beating Van der Poel by 30 seconds. So he's like a decent puncher. And so they're giving him the green light. And there's so many different things coming together, Benji, to create this race situation. And that's like Wanty not really wanting to commit to Binny. It's UAE. UAE's got idea, Benji, this morning. And the rest of the day, UAE have EF have yellow. EF have a very strong rouleur team. EF will do all our work this morning. And they were completely switched off for a lot of their break formation. And when you have a team that's not used to controlling these stages, like EF, you can have stranger outcomes happening. They're letting certain moves go. They're bringing back certain moves that they shouldn't. It's a bit like they're not setting any pace. So like on a narrow road, when the brake's gone that you're happy with, you block. And you can put a block on, happy days, no pace, let it out. On a wider road, you can't block. You have to set a pace. Otherwise, guys will just start pinging attacks.
That is true. But to be honest, when you look at this whole first phase of the race, those attacks they are happening, and that block doesn't really come up. But we're going to get into a blockade in a second here in the peloton that is actually very influential on the rest of the race. Because we said it earlier, Schmidt, Ballerini, Abrahamsen, still in G1, that Wout van Aert chasing group. Yes, it's been caught a few times in the meanwhile. He goes again, he's in another second group. But the gap is 45 seconds, and you said it, the blockade really isn't there. But now we got a moment before we start talking about the blockade where there's a split in the peloton behind those two groups, where Jonas Vingegaard is in peloton 1, but with limited teammates, because Wout is also up the road, if I recall correctly. And I think Pogačar, Healy, and I think also Evenepoel maybe in peloton 2. Is that correct?
Remco, I think, might have been in peloton 1 this split.
Okay.
He was definitely. There was another second time Pogačar was caught behind.
We'll get to
and
that.
Then I'm talking. No. There was a second time. There was an inconsequential split. I'm not talking about the Healy move. There was like multiple times on some rollers, the peloton splits. We cannot do the notes on how many attacks there were. Van Aert was investing. too much. The blocks were going on, and the group would get 45 seconds. Then FDJ would pace like crazy. It'd go to 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, it's clear that the break is going to win because no one team is strong enough to control, nor confident enough their rider can control. The only one would be Alpecin, and they're not going to do that. So everyone knows it's break green light. Trek are doing the right thing. And then, I mean, Schmidt and Ballerini and Abrahamsen, Benji, they just keep trucking. This whole time,
keep trucking, bro.
they just keep riding.
Super strong, super impressive. Now, that group, that peloton split got undone by EF Pacing, but after that, the attacks just keep on flowing in. And like you said, those three riders still up the road. Wout van Aert's group, who was in the second group, who was still ahead of those split pelotons, gets caught. And that's when it calms down a little bit, because we only get one attack from that point, which is Fred Wright and Mathieu Burgodeau, so a rider from Bahrain and from Total Energie, attacking from the peloton and bridging to the front. Now we've got 5 breakaway riders. Wright, Burgodeau, Abrahamsen, Ballerini, and Mauro Schmid. Those are the 5 riders up the road at the moment. Then 85 kilometers to go. Tempo dies. Riders go for a nature break. Pogačar goes for a piss, etc.
But not the yellow jersey.
Of the peloton, that is true. The yellow jersey does not go for a piss. But at the front of the peloton, 8 teams or 4 teams or 5 teams, whatever, are now doing the blockade that you were referring to earlier. The fact that there's team blocking it up at the front of the peloton where they're like, okay, Alpecin, EF, okay, this breakaway of 5, perfect for us. EF's happy because yellow jersey is not in danger by the riders up the road. Alpecin's happy because, okay, Van der Poel can win from the peloton this way. Maybe Intermarché was also there because they have been quite controlling before. But now is the moment, Patrick, that re-triggers this entire race. One Intermarché rider breaks the blockade, and his goal is to start setting a controlling pace behind the breakaway to keep the breakaway in check. But Patrick, what happens here?
So EF and Alpecin decide they're going to get smart. I think it's, Luke will correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he's related to him, Roel St. Martensdijk, Van St. Martensdijk. He is just coming up, he couldn't be coming up more slowly. Like, he's 6'6", he's moving up so slowly, you just have to not be a dick and take his wheel. And Alpecin and EF are like, haha, we'll be smart. We got guys in the break. I think Alpecin didn't even have, they had Murisa ahead. It wasn't Van der Poel ahead. They just had Murisa ahead. And they were like, they let his wheel go. And then he gets like 25 meters. And they should have just taken, and as I said, EF should have just started to set some sort of pace. I mean, for EF, it doesn't matter. Whatever, they had a fine day. Then FDJ come up with 2. Pacher and Rousseau. Rousseau's a truck. And they see the Intermarché guy ahead, and they're like, oh, fuck, I guess they're not going to help us control now because there's a guy ahead. We got to jump to him. They jump to him. He gets on their wheel. They start continuing. And then other teams, the gap was 2 minutes, Benji. I was ready to take a pee myself. I mean, the whole time, I told Mrs. Rouge, I said, we could go out for coffee this early afternoon, have a lunch. It's going to be a quick break formation, no worries. And then, I said to her, I'm sorry, but Intermarché just broke the blockade. We have to go back and watch this on multi-screen on the big TV. And this was then absolute carnage, Benji. Like, it went from complete control to literally nobody controlling, and anybody that wanted to go in a counter move jumped up the road. Anybody. Like,
anybody, to the point that Intermarché themselves started jumping.
Yes, Benny went with Van Aert, with Simmons, with Axel Laurence. They get across to a big move. Arnaud Delis, El Toro is looking good.
This was good racing from this point again, because breakaway formation phase for me is always a fun part of the race, but it was an infinite breakaway formation phase here. You said it. After that blockade was penetrated, we had that move with Wout van Aert, 15 riders roughly, including Intermarché, and there was this moment where there was an Intermarché rider in that group of Wout van Aert, and they pass, apparently, Roel van St. Martensdijk, is what you say, and the one Intermarché rider does to the other like, use your head or something, and points to his head. So Intermarché themselves were not too happy about the other Intermarché rider. But actually, I think it's partially the responsibility of Jeven Alpecin, like you said, that wanted to be smart and therefore also didn't help the situation at all. But anyway, attacks keep following. Movistar attacks with Rubio. Quinn Simmons, who's been attacking all day, goes again. Arendsman, other attacks. That group of Wout van Aert is still sitting there in Group 2, basically, behind those 5 riders up the road. So all these attacks from Rubio are behind in the peloton. Unsuccessful move by Rubio. But that's where it gets interesting, because that move does cause the peloton to line out and splits to occur in that peloton. Now, Vingegaard and Healy start gradually moving up, and I start seeing a teammate of EF moving next to Healy, and suddenly there's an EF rider leading out Ben Healy at the front of the peloton to go into the attack himself in the yellow jersey. And who's in the wheel, Patrick? Which rider is in the wheel of Ben Healy when that happens?
Jonas Vingegaard. And remarkably similar, Benji. I'm sure you all remember the break formation on stage 10, the Tuesday stage in the 2023 Tour de France to Issoire. And on one of the first hills, it was chaotic. Vingegaard jumped in the break there. And this is the similar situation. Healy stage, after the first rest day, he jumps with Healy. I think it's smart, Benji, because like Healy's doing it. Vauquelin's ahead, because Vauque was in the group. Vauquelin's been aggressive the whole time, and Healy's like, well, he's a top 10 candidate, I got to get in. And he's running out of teammates. And Vingegaard's like, well, Van Aert's ahead, let's cause some chaos. And Wellen sees that, and he starts pulling absolutely full. Like full, and then flicks the elbow. Vingegaard's just getting across with Healy. Van Aert's heard on the radio, he's going to the back of the group. But by the time they get across, by the time Van Aert starts pacing, Evenepoel snap closes it, and he closes the group. I think this is fine, because Remco's not just closing Vingegaard. He's closing Vauquelin. He's closing Ben Healy in yellow, who's got, two minutes on him. It's still not his problem.
About Healy and Vauquelin. So he did close it because Jonas was in there, in my opinion. That being said, Wellens was the first one to close half the gap, and Remco closing the last part. What I noticed while rewatching the phase is that when Remco closes that last part himself, Pogačar's actually not in the wheel anymore. There's someone that loses the wheel, maybe X rider or a Red Bull rider, and because of that, Pogačar has to close the last 50 meters by himself, then 15 meters behind the Remco group, which is obviously an effort, which Pogačar can probably afford to do, let's be honest about that. But Remco also doesn't know about that, so in Remco's mind, he's also bringing back a group that has Pogačar in this group. I don't mind it too much, to be honest. At the end of the day, I think if I have to put myself in the position of Remco, then I would see Vingegaard as the one person on the podium that I could potentially be to get second in this race, while I might not believe that towards Pogačar. And therefore, I would focus on Vingegaard more than on Pogačar. So if it was a different situation where Remco's up the road, Vingegaard would not close that, in my opinion.
If you want to ride against Jonas as Remco, what you do is use the Jonas. Is Pogačar in UAE gonna let Vingegaard ride away 100 fucking Ks from the finish,
no.
Benji?
So it's an unnecessary effort, basically.
It's unnecessary, and it's more relevant in a final. We've been saying it, Benji. We said it on Dauphiné Stage 1. You let those two play each other, and then you attack when they've given each other a couple of haymakers.
Yep.
And he did it on the final climb on Stage 10. What did they do? Nothing. They didn't even react. Now imagine the Aero Bullet does it on the flat in one of these finishes.
Yeah.
Then you ain't bringing him back so easily. So that's the bigger problem. It's not that he's doing Pog's work. It's hurting his own race doing this. And I understand it. He's isolated. He can't rely on his team. But still, okay, we've got to get to we'll get to the resolution of that in a second, Benji. I mean, sometimes you can think cycling training's too complicated. I personally think this stage is too complicated to unravel in just a 45-minute podcast. I need to rewatch the whole thing. But with joint cycling, training can be straightforward. It strips out the jargon. You don't need to know about aerobic threshold, lactate curves, VLA max, all this sort of stuff, which I pretend to know about. It just tells you you're getting better, what you need to do to get better with simple, clear guidance. Each workout is explained in plain English. All the workouts are simple. And you know what I love about the joint cycling workouts, Benji? They're not delivered. Like sometimes you see workouts in other platforms and you're like, why is this so complicated? The professionals don't train like this. The professionals, when you see their workouts, they're remarkably straightforward. They have a basic VO2 max workout. They have some tempo workouts. They have some endurance workouts. Why amateurs having to memorize 35 different intervals in an hour session? And joint cycling doesn't fluff it up with any of that sort of stuff. Each workout's in plain English. Just open the app, follow your ride plan, because progress comes from consistency, and joint is like having a coach right there that can adapt to you 24/7, 365, that speaks your language. So start your journey with joint cycling today. Just crunched a good ride with Seb actually this morning, and Ingvild, who's preparing for the Tour de France Femme, and yeah, I felt really, really good in the heat. So go check it out through the link down below. You get a 30-day free trial and even a discounted annual plan afterwards. So Remco closed it, Benji. Sivakov looked good today, I thought.
Yeah, Sivakov looked proper today. Now, we can say look proper today, you look better than the other day. I'm still not like super impressed either, you know? Like we still have to see it in the mountain stages, which tomorrow is upcoming. So that's where I'm intrigued by. That's where we'll see how good UAE's team still is without Almeida in the mountains versus Visma Leasebike, because I don't expect Sivakov to last as long as Simon Yates, for example, which is a pretty obvious take. Now, that being said, UAE was in relative control in that situation, partially because Pogačar solved it himself. Pogačar was the one that jumped towards that group as well to get away with Remco, and it kind of neutralizes itself at this point. This neutralizes the race situation a little bit, but in doing so, that group with Wout van Aert and the other second group people have been caught, but there's still a group ahead. We still got a group of 5 riders up ahead. We got to talk about them again. Mauro Schmid, Mathieu Burgodeau, Fred Wright, Ballerini, and Jonas Abrahamsen. Those 5 riders are still up the road at this point. And that's where we get maybe the last attack from this race, I would say, from the peloton. And that attack includes Wout van Aert once again, but also Mathieu van der Poel, Quinn Simmons, Arnaud Delis, who's been doing better the last couple of days, and Axel Laurence. So that's a 5-man group now chasing a 5-man group up the road, and that is when we see like the peloton actually stopping the attacks and being happy with this breakaway having formed. Was it a blockade occurring, or was it just general fatigue after all the attacks?
I think like every team is in by this point except poor old Movistar.
And IPT and Groupama.
And IPT and Groupama, who, you know, they had invested a lot. So like everyone's in except 3 teams. Everyone's tired on their knees. And also it's the demoralizing nature of it, Benji. Yeah, like let's clarify what the groups are. You got Abrahamsen, Ballerini, Mauro Schmidt, and they were joined, of course, by Burgodeau and Fred Wright. 5. Then you got Van der Poel, Delis, Laurence, Simmons, Van Aert. Trucks. That is a truck convention in the chase group 2. Like, how demoralizing is it where you're going to bridge across to them on the flat after jumping for 2 hours? I don't think so. So everyone's like, fuck it. Let's actually go for a pee. But by the time this happens, there's no siesta. Like, where's my siesta? I am entitled to, under the Podcasters Union, a siesta during the Tour de France on transition stages once the break is formed. But there was no time, Benji. There was no time because we were like 60 k's from the finish.
The hills were about to start, and the peloton was not like, okay, we're super happy with this break either, because there were 2 teams that started to pace. First of all, IPT started to pace. 0% chance to win from the peloton. So is this a, what do you call that fallacy again? When you invest so deep, you keep investing? So...
it's... sunk cost.
Sunk cost, yeah, it's kind of a sunk cost fallacy. They invest so much in trying to be in the breakaway, they miss it, and because they miss it, they keep investing in the rest of the stage to try and still get something out of it, despite having 0 chance if the pelotons come back, you know? So at that point, it's like, okay, just save your energy for the coming days and try and do something there because nothing's going to happen anymore at this point. Anyway, IPT stopped pacing. Groupama takes over to pace. Why they didn't pace together, nobody knows, but those two teams were not happy with the breakaway. Eventually, the breakaway looks clearly like it's going to be the winner here, but I'm going to let you discuss something you want to discuss on this podcast, because I was looking at this race and I saw 5 riders up the road and 5 chasers, and the gap stayed around 25 seconds, and I look at the front group and there's 20 motorbikes and a car in front of them. No shit, the gap doesn't close.
Yeah, listen, I think Van der Poel would have won from Group 2. So I'm not saying that, I'm not being too biased towards Van Aert, but it was outrageous, and we once again see the motos influencing the race. Like in the valleys between the hills, you have 5 guys. No offense to the guys in front. The guys in Group 2 are stronger riders. They're bigger riders. And it's Van der Poel, Van Aert, Simmons, De Lee pushing full on the flat against guys who've been in the break since the start of the stage. And I accept maybe that you actually have to work harder trying to get across. It's more stop-start. But they were losing time on the flats. And then on the climbs, they were gaining so much time. And so, they had basically a car cavalcade. And I don't care if there's, forget about the peloton, Benji. You just have to have consistency between the two groups. Either a moto in front of both, or the moto behind in both groups. And that changed the race completely. But, on the other hand, being in front is always an advantage. It's better to be in front. We say this all the time. And Abrahamsen went from the gun, Schmidt went from the gun, and they're in front.
Yes, but I am also of the opinion that if this motor pacing does not occur before G1, no one from that Group 1 wins and Mathieu van der Poel wins this race. That being said, it happens in cycling, so we got to talk as the situation progresses from there, because we're starting to get to the final hills now, and we've got the second last hill in the race that is actually very influential, because that's where the front group starts splitting up. Gap is still 20, 30 seconds at the foot of that climb. And in that group, we saw 2 riders making an attack or getting away. Mauro Schmidt, Jonas Abrahamsen. Those are the 2 strongest riders from that front group, which both of them were in the first attack of the day and spent the entire race at the front of the race. That is super strong, and yes, we discussed the motor pacing, but it doesn't take away from how strong these 2 riders are this entire race. Those 2 riders get away on the second last climb from the other 3 riders, and behind we see can we categorize what Quinn Simmons does as a thermonuclear attack?
It is, because no one closes it easily, and there was finessing in that group. You could see De Lee's investing as much as he can uphill, but he's just coming back into shape. It's great to see the bull in shape, but he's investing, he's trying, but they're leaning on Van Aert and Van der Poel here. And Van der Poel says, after the stage, he's getting different information to what we're seeing in the race. What I'm seeing in the race is a problem in front. Jonas Abrahamsen doesn't stop. Mauro Schmidt doesn't stop. Bergerdo's a strong puncher. Fred Wright's a class rider. And Van der Poel seemed to be under the impression with 20Ks to go that he could more start to finesse. And it starts to work, Benji. Van Aert's panicking. Van Aert's pacing too much. Van Aert's half attacking on the climbs with the group in his wheel. It's working. If you catch the guys in front. And Simmons, he thinks, well, I can't go to the final wall with Van der Poel because I'm going to get stomped.
Yeah.
And he attacks, has to. Smart move. Van Aert tries to respond full. Van der Poel starts pacing full, but the cohesion's completely gone on that second last climb. Meanwhile, the group in front, they just were working the whole time. I think maybe Schmidt accelerated with Abrahamsen, but I think the group in front was kind of just dropping, and it was just Abrahamsen and Schmidt through a war of attrition were going clear on the second last climb. They get to there's a fast descent, it's a pedaling descent, you need to work there. Van der Poel's group doesn't work well. It goes to 30 seconds, 34 seconds. They lose more time. Simmons is in the middle. Wright's dropped. Ballerini's dropped. Bergerdo's in between Schmidt and Abrahamsen. Right-hand corner. I'm thinking Schmidt's going to drop him. He's a better puncher. It's a 18% wall. This guy says he's 80 kilos. Abrahamsen just starts setting a pace on this final wall. He takes the corner really wide as if to bait Schmidt. Then he just starts setting a pace. The group behind gets there. Van Aert starts pacing, and what we see in the classics for years now, Benji, Van der Poel hits him with a real thermonuclear attack. No one can respond. And then it's we'll go back to the GC group after, but it's then between Schmidt and Abrahamsen. I would say, Benji, normally Van der Poel wins here in this context with 15 seconds, 8Ks to go, 2 guys in front.
Yeah, but
at some point they will finesse.
I would argue yes, but in this specific situation, Van der Poel has also just done a crazy attack to get to the top of that climb in the first place, probably over his limit, to get that gap to 20 seconds at the top of that last climb anyway. And I would argue yes, I still thought okay. Peak Mathieu Van der Poel gets to that wheel and does it. We're 12, 13 days into a Grand Tour. He's been in the attack for not 11 days out of that, but like for half of the days in that, he's been super offensive this entire race. I'm not shocked that he might not have it to close it down here. And yes, on the other end, Schmidt and Abrahamsen, I was expecting them to finesse, but they also know that Mathieu Van der Poel is chasing them behind. So in their radio, they're probably hearing, boys, keep on relaying, and they're not hearing, start to finesse the other guy. And I think that's what also changes it. Because if there's zero information about what's happening behind, they might start to relay, they might start to stop relaying and start to play games with each other. But knowing that Van der Poel is so close behind them, that's what drove them to keep on pedaling together until we enter the last kilometer and we see Abrahamsen and Schmidt going for the final sprint. And behind them, we see Mathieu Van der Poel 6 seconds behind them. But Patrick, we see a sprint, 1 versus 1, at the front, Abrahamsen or Schmidt, who's going to win this stage? And at that exact moment, there's a dude on one side of the road, some spectator protest thing, I'm guessing, that is about to get tackled by a security guard. I look back at the finish line, and they finished, and I have no clue who won the race. I was seeing a guy getting tackled, and that was much more impressive.
And like, there's also GC at the same time, not for what we're telling you, but at the same time on our TV screens, there's absolute carnage happening in the GC group, and my little brain was like, it started hurting, because I've been so stressed. I had to lay off the coffee, so like, I'm not functioning at 100%. And then there's just too much going on. I just almost said to Mrs. Rouge, just commentate what's happening. I can't watch.
Who won?
Abrahamsen won in a head-to-head sprint. These guys went from neutral. Mr. Prudhomme dropped the flag, and these guys went from neutral with Ballerini, and they rode the whole 158 Ks in front with the peloton chasing them with some classics legends all day. Motors aside, I don't care. Fully deserved for these two. It's a shame for Schmidt, but Abrahamsen probably was due one from last year or the year before. Last year, I think.
Unox's first victory in the Tour de France?
Is it?
Yeah.
And he's been very active in breakaways. He broke his collarbone 9 days before the Tour de France. Very, very exciting finish. Van der Poel finishes on just 7 seconds. So I think Van der Poel should have cooperated. I think he played himself maybe a little bit, but I don't know how much he was not relaying full in the end.
But Patrick, the entire chat of the podcast, everybody listening to the podcast, like, guys, can we start talking about what happened in the GC group? Because there's a very important rider that had something very sad occur to him in the last 10 kilometers of this race, but we got to bring it to the climb first. Because that last climb, we've got GC action there. It's Monsieur Kevin Vauquelin qui attaque à la gauche de rue, on the left of the road. And in the back, we see Healy first trying to close it. Then Lipovic takes over, and he starts pacing off to Vauquelin. And it's this fight between not the top GC riders, but it's actually quite fun. But then on the right side of the road, Jorgensen attacks, and it's a copy of what we saw yesterday, basically. Jorgensen goes, Pogačar's in the wheel, Jonas Vingegaard in that wheel. So that's what happens. But now we see a move by not just Jorgensen, but also his other co-leader, his main leader at Visma.
Pogačar didn't. He entered in good position, but I think he had to work himself there. It was a very tight right-hander. We saw the CX boys hop the curb when they entered it, Van der Poel and Van Aert, but Pog put himself in good position because Wellens had a puncture. He's out of it. He's gone. And yeah, I do want to give some props to Vauquelin, but yeah, Vingegaard does the attack over the top, Benji, and this is what we talk about with Remco, is Pogačar going to let Jonas go?
Nope.
No. Can Pogačar smooth his effort over the top because he knows Remco will do his donkey work for him every time? Yes. Because Pogačar wasn't immediately closing it in the wheel. He's like, Remco, you'll do it for me. And then I can have the overview from behind.
Well, I don't think that was the reason. To me, the way I looked at it was, Vingegaard goes on the left side of the road from the viewer's perspective. Remco sees that and goes on the left side of the road to get Vingegaard back. And on the right side, Pogačar reacts a bit late because he notices it later. And he attacks there on the right side of the road. And they come together in the middle of the road. And Pogačar's in the wheel of Remco. And Remco's closing Vingegaard, which, in my opinion, he should let Pogačar go, like we already stated in this podcast. So I fully agree with your conclusion. But I don't think Pogačar knew that Remco would close it for him. I think he just responded late because he was on the other side of the road and was in front of Vingegaard. That makes sense?
I'm telling you, Benji, if Pog closes that and Remco goes on a false flat downhill, I don't think Narvaez is bringing that back.
I don't think so either. And there's a few moments in the last week where Remco could have done that and rode differently. It's just because, in these first 12 stages, Soudal Quickstep does not have a plan. Their plan so far is ride conservatively, get to the mountains, and then hope you're one of the better riders in the mountains. That's what I've seen from Soudal Quickstep in these first 13 days of this Tour de France. But at the end of the day...
If you're not attacking in this Tour de France, Benji, you're responding, and you're on the back foot.
Why do I keep saying 13 days? There's been 11 days in this Tour de France. It just feels like 13.
We're all out of sorts because of the different rest day combination. It's really thrown me. Anyway, it looks like we're going to have a bit of a... To me, it looks like we're about to have a bit of a lame GC for 7Ks.
Yeah.
Some guys will jump. There'll be some looking around, some jumping. Narvaez is going to come back. Nothing will happen. That's what I thought was happening. I was like, oh, whatever. You can jump. Jorgensen goes. Closed by Pogačar. Vingegaard in the wheel. And then Narvaez comes back, attacks. So I was like, that's strange. The two Visma guys just let him go because they're like, he's not in GC and there's no stage win up the road.
It's like Kuss in stage 10.
Yeah, it's exactly like the Kuss. It's like, okay, cool. He attacks. Pogačar's on the radio there being like, Johnny, that's not helping matters. I need you to come back and set a pace to stop this shenanigans. And that doesn't happen. Attack. Kevin Vukana goes again on the right. Lipovitz loves this sort of jumping. This is Ben Healy's. Ben Healy loves a bit of racing like this too. Oscar Onley, they're all getting involved with it. Like, fuck it, let's go. Let's have some racing. We're fresh after the rest day. I don't know who jumps right. I was too focused on the left. Someone jumps right. Maybe Kevin. Remco follows from the middle, from the Pog Vingegaard zone. Vingegaard's maybe front left with Jorgensen. Pogačar's back left of the group. He's got Narvaez maybe sewing things up. He's not chilling, but he's he has no real reason to panic. He has Narvaez there keeping this, sewing it up. He gets on the radio, right hand, and then Jorgensen goes after Remco, right. Johannesson comes from behind Pogačar, goes after Jorgensen's wheel, right. The whole group starts moving right. Pog's got one hand only on left brake. So also it's very... Correct me if I'm wrong with the overhead, Benji. I will check now.
You're correct in your explanation so far. It's Johannesson.
Pogačar had his right hand off the levers.
I don't know which hand it was. He had one hand on his radio, one hand on his levers, because he was radioing at that exact moment. Which
so
you're not
this
necessarily...
is key.
Oh, go ahead.
Because it's his right hand off the lever. He cannot apply pressure on the right side of the bike to go right, which is the way the group is going. He can only go straight because, you can sort of push with your left hand, but not with the same force as your right hand. So that's key. And he goes straight a bit. Johannesson comes across. He gets chopped. He doesn't go straight down. I think he crashes, again, like with I said it with Almeida, but he crashes well as he could, in that he doesn't just go straight down onto his shoulder, which is collarbone territory. He gets the foot out. He slides for a bit with the foot out. He has both hands on the bars. He does extend, and he hits his left elbow and left hip first, but more on the fat of his butt rather than, I don't know exactly. There is a curb, and he braces for the curb, tucks in, and he hits his left shoulder, but not... He doesn't hit and stick. He bounces off, and he had decelerated a fair amount. He doesn't. He has a slight mech. The chain's off, but the derailleur's not fucked, so he doesn't need a new bike. Crazy, Benji.
Yep. It's a massive moment in the race because Pogačar has crashed, and we don't know what's happening in the group that he crashed from yet. So we don't know if his Malisa bike's spacing, if Soudal Quickstep Remco spacing or anything. We don't know if stuff like that is happening. We see Pogačar down. We're like, okay, Shimano guy, I'm pretty sure, jumps out of the car and starts pushing him up again to get him rolling again. So if that was true, if that was a Shimano guy, pretty fast work from that man. Pogačar's back on the bike, but we have to analyze the actual crash of Pogačar here because, first of all, you've got, like, on social media, the cam that is roasting Johannesson as if he tried to kill Mr. Pogačar, which that is exaggeration. On the other hand, you've got, oh, it's Pogačar's fault. And in the middle, you've got race incident between the two. If I look at this crash, I see Pogačar who... He's a little bit inattentive for the last 5 kilometers of a stage. We need to accept that fact. He's with one hand on his bike and one hand on his radio. Now, a rider is allowed to be on their radio in the last 5 kilometers, but it's also at least partially their responsibility to guard their front wheel in the last 5 kilometers of a race. On the other side, we see Johannesson, and this is also an important fact for me. He comes from behind Pogačar on the left side, moves up on the left side, and is already moving right. In doing so, chopping Pogačar, basically. Now, the question is, how much is this Johannesson's fault versus how much is this a race incident versus how much is this Pogačar being inattentive in this moment? And my first reaction was... Oh, go ahead.
Well, Benji, this ain't no, like, P-break. They're in the last 5Ks of what's turned into a GC stage with full jumping, like literally every Vingegaard, Remco full jumping phase is on, and he's not in control, fully in full control of his bike. And there's another thing I've just watched that's also relevant.
Okay.
There's 2 trains, and the Vismas are on the left, and the Remcos of the world are on the right. Or no, sorry, not Remco, whoever was jumping. But because Jorgensen, just as Pog's on the radio, Jorgensen makes to move. And so Pog, I think you can't tell, but I think Pog started to, and he can do this, he's the rider that can accelerate in the saddle better than anyone. I think he started to accelerate a bit left towards Jorgensen's back wheel because he has been following Jorgensen the whole race. And that also made it more that he couldn't decelerate in time when Johannesson cut across him. So it's a race incident. I wouldn't blame Johannesson that much, frankly.
I'm going to slightly counter you here in the sense that I had the same opinion as you when I initially rewatched the phase during the race, and I was like, okay, Pogačar's inattentive here and gets chopped. But watching the helicopter view, for me, there's a difference between getting chopped and getting chopped, you know? Where if you get chopped from the left side, let's say Johannesson moves from the left side, right? In doing so, chopping Pogačar just with his back wheel to the front wheel. That kind of vibe, you know? Like a light chop. I don't know. I was going to say medium rare chop, but I'm pretty sure it's a rare chop, I would say, then if we compare it to a steak. So in this specific case, if hypothetically a situation occurs where Johannesson deviates, it's not a sprint, but deviates to the right, and in doing so, his back wheel chops Pogačar's front wheel, then I 100% agree that Pogačar is more at fault than Johannesson here. But I'm starting to lean to the other way around because
I see what you mean.
Johannesson doesn't just chop Pogačar's front wheel with his back wheel, he chops in his entire handlebars.
I agree.
And
I
that's
agree.
where I land on Johannesson went way too early to the right. And I didn't realize this until I saw the helicopter view. Because that
I'm watching the
helicopter
heli
view
now.
shows so much more than the back view. In the back view, I'm like, okay, Pogačar inattentive. Helicopter view, Johannessen made a mistake, 100%.
I agree. When you watch the back view, it looks like it's Johannessen's movement is natural following Lipowitz towards Van Wilder. I don't know why Van Wilder was attacking, but anyway, it's cool. And you're right, and that's less like Pog's on the radio, but he's largely following the group. Like Vingegaard, he's on his line. He's following Narvaez, and yeah, Johannessen hits his hand. He hits his hand, man. Like, and there's space. Like, there's Jorgensen, between Pogačar and Jorgensen, there's space for Johannessen to shoot the gap better. And yeah, I agree, Benji. So you can say shoot wise Pog on the radio. I guess he's just saying to Narvaez, set a pace. You know, it's still fine to be on. There's no rule against being on the radio in the last 5Ks. So I've changed my mind, and I think, yeah, it's a race incident, but Johannessen comes across him way too early.
If I'm Visma Leasebike, for example, in this specific situation, would I start riding in the group ahead? Yes. But that's me. I think if you're Visma Leasebike, they did the right thing in not starting to ride. Because what are you going to gain? 20, 25 seconds in this situation? At the end of the day, those 20, 25 seconds are not going to mean the world in the mountains that are upcoming. And you're upsetting everyone in the sport and every fan of the sport as well in the process. So I think it's probably better to not start riding than the way they've been doing it. Basically, their reaction was perfect in my opinion. Because otherwise, if you start riding, you're gonna get shunned on the internet. But on top of that, you're not gonna get any respect from your people in the peloton either. While at the end of the day, what's much more important for the rest of the race is the consequences of the crash. Pogačar looks relatively okay, but if there's an ache here or an ache there, or he's got a hole in his style like Roglic in that Giro, then that does impact the race way more than any potential advantage that they could have gotten otherwise by riding. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, say Visma take 10 seconds, they're going to get crucified. And 10 seconds ain't winning you the Tour de France. I mean, Vingegaard's like 120 back. So, and then maybe Jorgensen thinks he was, you know, you can't see what's behind you. Maybe they didn't react in time. UAE also had two guys pulling full. Narvaez would have waited, so maybe you don't even take a gap. So you're going to kill... Anyway, I would have paced, Benji, you would have paced, Luke would have paced, we all would have paced.
They probably shouldn't. That's just as I think.
But it's like, the race was on, he had his hands off the bars, you know. But also, it doesn't make a difference in this stage. So I understand why they didn't pace. How does this affect the upcoming stages? I think we don't know. I think it's UAE were like, it's a light crash, it's nothing. No crash is nothing. You don't know that at the finish. Also, you have the adrenaline going. Yeah. So it's better not to crash. It's always better not to crash.
Thank you for the wise information, Patrick. That is valuable. It's wise not to crash.
But to round out the stage results, Jonas Abrahamsen wins ahead of Schmidt and Van der Poel, De Lee, Van Aert, Laurence, Fred Wright, Bergerdo, Simmons, Ballerini. Narvaez still sprinted for those sweet UCI points despite Pog crashing, which was somewhat hilarious. And yeah, that was that. So it remains to be seen. What happens tomorrow. We have the Hautacam stage tomorrow, which we should preview now, Benji, because it's not a good time to crash before what is one of the hardest stages in the race, 181 Ks from Auch to Hautacam. And the first 120 Ks is rolling flat. It's not pancake flat. There's still some hills in there. Then they do a Category 1, the first of the race, Col du Soulor, 12 Ks, 7.5% descent. Then the Col de Bordeaux, 3.3, 8%. Then another descent, step descent rather, of 20 Ks to the bottom of Hautacam, 13.5 Ks, 8%. Vingegaard Vingegaard waited for Pogačar after he crashed himself off Spandels in 2022, and then Vingegaard dropped him after the Van Aert Koes lead out on Halterkam.
Patrick.
But, yes?
I'm going to tell you what's going to happen on this stage.
What's going to happen?
I'm going to tell you. UE does not have the strength in the mountains, is what we've said. Kind of after Almeida's crash out of the race, or not have the strength. They're not the best team in the mountains anymore. So what I think is going to happen on this stage is UE still has the team to control on the flat, etc. I think UE will try to control the stage. And in doing so, Pogačar will be isolated relatively quickly on the final climb, I would expect. Adam Yates might last longer than he has in the last 11 days. But I think Pogačar is going to win regardless of whether he's got a numerical advantage against him in Vingegaard, Jorgensen and so forth. And I think this will also be the last day in this Tour de France where Jorgensen is going to be a potential threat against Tadej Pogačar. Because if he's on another minute and a half after Otakam, on top of the distance that he's already behind in GC, which that's almost 3 minutes then. So Pogačar has no need to respond to Jorgensen anymore if that happens tomorrow. And the difference between Pogačar and Vingegaard and Jorgensen and Remco, etc., that group, we saw that on stage 10. They had 20 seconds immediately when Pogačar attacked. And I think it does give an advantage. The fact that Almeida's not there does limit the lead out that Pogačar can have on a potential attack that Pogačar does, which might allow Jonas to follow the first attack of Pogačar. But if that happens, then it's Pogačar and Jonas. And then becomes a 1v1. And if Pogačar can literally just continue rolling attacks, like can literally continue attacking Vingegaard, obviously Jorgensen will come closer, etc., if they sit up, etc. But a stop-start attack climb benefits Pogačar over Vingegaard, in my opinion, no?
I mean, they're just stronger than the others uphill. They're just way stronger in the mountains than the others, and so either way, whether it's a hard pace, whatever, they're going to be stronger than the others. But yeah, I do think like those explosive attacks probably hurts Remco even more than them, relatively speaking. Yeah. And maybe Jorgensen as well. So it's hard, 8%. There's a 5K section on Halterkam that's like 9%.
Very hard.
It's a pretty hard climb. And we don't go to high altitude, but it's a hot day tomorrow, 33 degrees in the valleys. It was a hard day today. Pogačar's crashed.
I do expect Visma to hard pace. Is it Soulard, the second last climb? Or the third last climb?
Soulard's the first long climb.
I do expect Visma to pace that in the hopes to isolate UAE or isolate Pogačar as early as possible on the stage. I think that's your Visma's side of things on tomorrow's stage.
Who do you think wins, Benji?
I think Pogačar wins and he takes 24 seconds on Vingegaard and a minute plus on the others.
I think Vingegaard wins in a sprint. I think Pogačar kind of says, fuck it, I'm like a minute 20 ahead, you're on my wheel, and he paces to the finish to stop Remco and Jorgensen coming back, and then Vingegaard just wins the sprint.
Okay. Let's see what happens tomorrow.
But yeah, should be a good stage. Sivakov looked better today.
Yeah, you're right, but I just hope that the Tour is not decided by tomorrow evening, that we have like a fight, whether it's Vingegaard getting closer than I expect, or whether it's Pogačar. He probably won't have a weak moment on Otakam. I don't expect that tomorrow. I'd be surprised by that. It's been a heavy 11 days of racing, but for that to already occur on the first mountain stage, don't necessarily see that, but it should be a pretty good race, huh?
I think it's going to be exciting, and I would be surprised. I never say never. I might look silly, but I would be surprised if Pogačar fully killed the Tour de France tomorrow, mainly because his team doesn't look... If he had Almeida there, if he hadn't crashed, and he's got a full form Yates, he could kill the Tour tomorrow, but he doesn't have Almeida. Yates looks a bit suspect, and so I think he'll be on the defensive again. So, that's the preview of tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Crazy stage, chaotic, and maybe we'll have another one tomorrow. I dare say we will. Until then, ciao, ciao.